You know what surprised me most after Black Clover ended? Not the final battle with Yuno, and not who ultimately became the Wizard King. We never actually found out who Asta's father is. And no, my theory isn't built on the idea that Asta is short for Astaroth. It goes way deeper than that, and somehow nobody's really talked about it. Tabata wrapped up almost every storyline. Yuno got his ending, Asta fulfilled his dream, but one question was left completely unanswered. Today, I'm going to share my theory on who I think Asta's real father is. I'll walk you through my thinking and break it all down as clearly as I can. If this theory is even halfway right, Asta's origins are way more wild than anyone ever imagined. Let's start with something most fans just take for granted: Licita's curse. We're told that her body automatically absorbs the mana and life force of every living thing around her, constantly and without any control. Most people just accept that as a unique quirk she was born with and move on. But hold on, because the magic system of Black Clover is actually telling us something really important here. Remember Dorothy's words during the battle with Magicula? She explicitly states that Magicula is the source of most of the curses in the human world. Now think about Henry. His body constantly drains the mana of those around him, and he can't control it either. And later, we find out that's the result of a curse, not some inborn abnormality. The mechanics are identical. I'm not saying this is rock-solid proof on its own, but it's way too precise a coincidence to just brush off. What if Licita's condition was never something she was born with? What if it was a curse placed on her deliberately, with a specific purpose in mind? Think about this literally. A mother's body is constantly draining mana from everything around her. Adult beings can't survive prolonged contact with her, but Asta somehow made it through all 9 months inside her. That's not just a quirk, that's a biological paradox within this manga's own rules, and I only have one explanation that actually holds up. Asta's body started adapting before he was even born. He was essentially forced to change in order to survive, and at some point, he gave up his mana. He wasn't born without mana, he sacrificed it. In a world where magic can reshape the body, the soul, and the very nature of a being, that idea doesn't seem impossible at all. If anything, it transforms Asta's biggest anomaly from a random accident into something that actually makes sense. Now, there's one popular theory floating around. Asta's father was an ordinary man with no mana, possibly someone from a country similar to Yami's homeland. That would explain Asta's unusual build, his physical strength, and how different he looks compared to people from the Clover Kingdom. On paper, it sounds pretty reasonable, but here's the fundamental problem. Licita wasn't just draining mana, if I'm remembering correctly, she was draining life force too. Having no magic wouldn't protect you from that, and an ordinary person near her would still be in serious danger, and that's exactly where our second candidate comes in: Astaroth, one of the 3 supreme rulers of the underworld, a being with dominion over cause and effect. Who's the one entity in this world that could actually be around Licita without putting their own life at risk? Obviously a being who controls time itself. If Astaroth can stop time, create temporal loops, or rewind an object's state back to an earlier moment, then the constant life force drain stops being an impossible obstacle. He could simply reset the effect over and over again. But there's one more detail that's really hard to write off as coincidence, and that's the visual resemblance between Asta and Liba. I'm not talking about some vague general impression, I'm talking about specific details. The shape of the face, the jawline, the hair structure, the overall proportions. Tabata draws them to look deliberately similar, even though Liba is a devil, a fundamentally different kind of being. And it goes beyond just looks. Asta and Liba aren't just visually similar, they're thematic mirrors of each other. One lives in the human world, the other in the underworld. One lost his mana in the human world, the other was born a devil also without mana. What if Licita had twins? One inherits the human side and ends up in the world of humans. The other inherits the demonic side and ends up in the underworld. One sacrifices his mana to survive, and the other is born a devil, but also without mana. Look at this through the lens of Black Clover's central theme. The entire story is built on opposites: light and darkness, hope and despair, human and devil. 2 boys from an orphanage who spend their whole childhoods chasing the same dream by completely different paths. 2 twins separated between 2 worlds from the very moment of their existence. That's not a contradiction of the series' philosophy. I'd argue it's the perfect embodiment embodiment of it. But then comes the final question, the most important one. Why would Astaroth do any of this? After reading through the manga, I came to realize that the devil of time doesn't act on impulse. A being with dominion over cause and effect sees the consequences before they happen. If Astaroth was truly with Licita, that wasn't by chance. That was almost certainly a plan. He saw multiple moves ahead and kept all the variables under control. But Asta became the one variable he couldn't account for. A person without magic. A being who doesn't fit into any predictive system. Which is exactly what you get when someone's very nature is deliberately broken before they're even born. What if Astaroth saw his own enslavement by Lucius before it ever happened? What if that's exactly why two beings without mana were created beings who are impossible to see through any future prediction system? In that case, Asta isn't some random anomaly. He becomes a weapon against time itself. The boy without magic who earned everything through sheer effort, maybe he was never an accident. Maybe he was the final move in a game Astaroth started long before Lucius ever showed up. I think the author intentionally left us without an answer. Maybe he wanted to give us one, but ultimately decided not to pull focus away from the story's ending by dedicating several flashback chapters to the past. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Astaroth is Asta's father, or do you have a theory that closes the gap even better?